I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a time and the place for the February 4th regular board meeting. Welcome to all of you who are with us, and welcome to welcome to those who will be viewing us on delayed broadcast. Allow me to introduce the people at the table with me. From my right, we have Karina Hernandez, Bob Unteet, Sean Heitman. From the left, we have Jan McGinnis, Mike Miller, and Sarah Faltus. At the center table with me to my right is Paulette Newbold, the board secretary, and to my left is Dr. Theron Schutte, the district superintendent, and I'm B. Niblock. Allow me to remind you that anyone who would care to address the board and is not on the agenda needs to sign up on the pink sheet on the speakers table. You will be given 5 minutes to share the information that you wish to share directly after the consent agenda. The board will not be able to respond to your comments as is dictated by board policy, but we thank you for your comments. Please read with me the Marshalltown Community School District mission statement. We develop learners who have the knowledge, minds,
and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences.
Very well done.
We didn't have our leader there.
But you carried on without. I was expecting to see it up there and didn't, so. And now stand as you are able and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, under the MHS course guide, which Jackie Wyatt will speak toward later in the meeting, there were some additional classes that were added. One is a series of fire service classes that would be through Kirkwood and MCC, allowing for fire safety as well as EMT certifications. Another is a couple ag-related classes, kind of an Ag 1, and then also an animal science class for next year, which will help with the meat cutting apprenticeship at Fairway that we're pursuing, and then also year 2 of early childhood education certificate course that was added. And then Nora has some personnel adjustments also.
Good evening. I have several there up on the screen. Can you see it up there, folks? Okay. Under teachers, you'll see the 2 highlighted folks. We have Paula Whipple, who has applied for the early retirement benefit. And then we also have Rhonda Vasky, who is retiring at the end of the year, not an early retirement, due to benefits that she does or doesn't have. If you continue on to the 3rd page, we have the additions of Joe, sitting over there, and Chandler as high school dramatics coach. They're going to split that stipend evenly to share those responsibilities. And the next page, Khadija. I'm not going to pronounce that last name, but it's Khadija. And she will be, she's currently a bus monitor, and then in the middle of the day, she'll be serving food at Franklin. So there's an addition there for that salary for that 2.5 hours a day. And then the last page, Buildings and Grounds, Grant Carter, a change of hourly rate because he has obtained his spraying certificate, so there's an 80-cent increase to his hourly rate. And those are the changes on the personnel consent agenda. Thanks.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Unteet Hernandez, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0.
So for recognitions, we want to thank a couple of folks here who donated money for us to put up the honor wall in the community auditorium, recognizing all state earners over the years here at Marshalltown Schools. So it's beautiful if you get a chance to go by the auditorium and take a look at it. It looks really neat. It goes really well with the existing auditorium lobby area. So I don't know if we have anyone coming up.
So we have Bill Fitzgerald and Larry Fonts from the formerly known as the Auditorium Foundation Board, now known as the Marshalltown Performing Arts Center Board.
Yes, exactly. I'm vice chair of the board, so I'm here. I've got a couple of other things I wanted to cover before we got to the, and I'll go very quickly. I'll let Larry introduce himself.
Larry Fonts, I'm the treasurer of the board.
I had some talking points on my phone, but I can't get the app to work, so I'm just going to.
You're not the only one.
So I'm also here as a representative of the Live on Stage Marshalltown Board. I've been involved in that for 20 years, so by my count, we brought about 115 performers from all over the world to Marshalltown over the last 20 years. And over those 20 years, the reaction has always been the same. You know, they're used to it, so they travel all over the place on these little, sometimes some small towns. Many times Marshalltown is kind of a typical town. So they're playing in cafetoriums and other things, and they walk into our venue with great seating, state-of-the-art technology, a fantastic staff, great acoustics, a Steinway, and they're just amazed. So, we got talking on the Auditorium Foundation Board about how we might change the name to better reflect the quality of the venue. So we wanted to thank you, first of all, for approving the name change. We do think it really reflects the quality of not only the place, the venue, but the staff as well. So thanks very much. Second subject, again, I'm going to touch on it very quickly. Kind of along the same lines. In our last, it was probably the next to last board meeting, we got started talking about, what we ended up with after phase 2 is finished. We have a really nice circle drive now in front of the venue. And we thought, why not look at creating some public art that celebrates the arts, much like drills celebrates athletics on the south side. So we are moving ahead with that. There'll be a lot more details to come. We've got Amber Danielson from the Marshalltown Arts and Culture Alliance is fully engaged. She's putting together a committee of community representatives to help us pick the sculpture that we want to have in that centerpiece out in front of the auditorium. But we really think the name change and the sculpture could really add a really nice cachet to the venue. So we're going to be moving forward with that, probably officially announcing in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But we have a very nice gift, a $10,000 gift from the Dr. Grather family that we're going to use to kick off a matching fundraising campaign. So stay tuned for more details on that. So finally, the primary reason we're here, again, at the end of phase 2 transition for the Roundhouse, and I think that went really, really well. We got there were some people worried that the auditorium was going to suffer in that, and it really turned out well. The only negative that we could come up with coming through that whole process was we lost a couple of windows, and we ended up with kind of a blank, a little bit of an eyesore on the south side of the lobby. So again, the Auditorium Foundation started talking about what could we do with that, and I'm not even sure who came up with the idea at the time, but the idea that we ended up approving, and we're here to fund this evening, was the honor roll arts wall, much like you used to have, around the outside of the Roundhouse. And Larry is going to present a check to cover the cost of that. And the last thing I wanted to do, which is thank you all for working with us on that, and then make sure we thanked our donors. We, as a board, our primary role is to make sure that we maintain and help manage that facility so that 20 years from now, performers from Ireland are walking in and saying, I can't believe there's a venue like this in Marshalltown, Iowa. So That's it from me.
And I simply have a check for $4,841.15 that I will pass on to Dr. Schutte.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Sure. Turn this way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And our auditor will see that I'm going to hand this right over.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We also, it is National School Counselors Week as well, and we have a couple of our wonderful counselors here, and I believe we also have a proclamation to read. So, yeah. And this is Ashley Chima and Valerie Corson. So.
And these are our two PLC leads for the counselors. And I'm just going to read this proclamation, and that is up on the screen as well. Whereas, school counselors are employed in public and private schools to help students reach their full potential. And whereas, school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development. And whereas, school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children. And whereas, excuse me, school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves. And whereas, school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become more productive members of society. And whereas, comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school, therefore, I, and it will be signed by B. Niblock, do hereby proclaim February 3rd through 7th, 2020 as National School Counseling Week. Thank you for your service and your commitment to all the students.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of January 6th special meeting? January 13th regular meeting? Are there any items of note in personnel?
Come on back. Get my steps in for the day.
You've got a lot more visits to this table if you're going for 10,000.
Oh, you're right, I do. All righty, we have 4 requests, as you saw, to take advantage of the early retirement option. We have a lot of wonderful years of service represented by these 4 individuals. I am proud to share a few words of appreciation for each of them, as well as Rhonda Vasky, who is retiring. Sherry Edwards. Sherry has been a member of the Anson family for over 20 years. In that time, she has dedicated herself to serving the students and staff of Anson as the building's nurse. Principal Manus says that she will be sorely missed as she begins the next part of her journey. Mary Harris has worked as an ELL teacher for the district since 2005. Principal Garza describes her as having a true passion for EL dual language instruction. She consistently advocates for her students and is a continual learner. Excuse me. John Fiskus, a direct quote from Principal Ryle. Mr. Fiskus has been a staple in the Marshalltown Community School District for 34 years, educating thousands of students and mentoring teachers. He has been an asset to Miller Middle School and worked tirelessly to make a difference. You can't replace a teacher, person, or leader like him. Mr. Fiskus will be truly missed here at Miller Middle School, end quote. We are also really grateful for his many years spent as a driver's ed teacher and coach of many sports such as baseball, volleyball, track, and tennis. Paula Whipple has served as a kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher, and most recently a special education teacher at Hoagland. Paula values relationships with students and shows her care for them each day. She is positive, caring, and dedicated to helping students achieve and grow not only in academic areas, but social, emotional as well, says Principal Williams. And finally, Rhonda. This is a direct quote from, excuse me, Principal Holmgren. I had the privilege of hiring Rhonda Vasky as a third grade teacher in October of 2009. In the fall of 2010, she took her patience, kindness, and compassion to a kindergarten classroom where she has successfully served since. Rhonda is reliable and committed to the success of students, and she'll be greatly missed. I look forward to her bringing her skills and smile back to the halls of Franklin as a substitute teacher in the future. Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you to all these teachers for their many, many years of service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Ryan, if you can email that updated information, then we'll add it to the record as well.
Looking at interagency agreements and contracts, we have one for dietetic internships with Iowa State University. We have an application to the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union for cooperative sharing, an MOE regarding data sharing with the Mind Research Institute. I believe that's STMAT. Field experience placement agreement with Morningside College. Also one with Upper Iowa University, and an agreement with Iowa Valley to use the facility for paraeducator professional development. Looking at open enrollments for the remainder of this year, we have 1 in and 8 out related to having moved to another district. For the next school year, 2021, we have 12 out. Any items of note in bills? Any questions for Paulette?
I would just add, there's the amendment with the agreement for the pre-apprenticeship and masonry also.
If you would, a comment about the open enrollments. Are we doing any sort of exit interview for these open enrollments?
I have reached out, and I know that Stacy Mommer, our registrar, does reach out to the principals if there are existing students that are open enrolling out to find out what they can about the circumstance. Many of these are continuations, which means they're moving into our district and then choosing to stay with the school they left.
You know, all the statistics I see and the vibe I get is that our school district is on the upswing. Everything is going well. And so I'm hoping that that message, Adam, is getting communicated well to parents in the district. It looks like too many of them are making what might not be the best choice for their kids here. And I hope that we are reaching out and letting them know that and letting the rest of the world know that.
And oftentimes, you know, people have to, by law, put in their requests prior to that March 1st deadline. A lot of times, people resend those requests and don't follow through on them, so that's why it's really difficult to know for sure what the situation is. But to your point, Mike, obviously, you know, we have been changing the trajectory in terms of fewer going out and more coming in, and so hopefully that will continue.
We'll have that information when we have student enrollment information in October.
Right.
May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Miller, Untied, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. Nobody on the pink sheet, Sean?
Nope.
We're over to you, Paulette.
All right, I'd like to welcome Mr. Dennis Meiskens from Hogan Hansen. He is going to present, do a quick review of the fiscal 19 audit that was released last week.
All right, well, thank you for having me. I thought about signing the pink sheet, so I got 5 more minutes on the agenda. Because I know how exciting audit reports are.
You
So,
wouldn't get 5 more, you'd only get 5.
Well, 5, but then I'd get this 15 minutes, so.
Sure.
I thought I'd go for an hour, but, you know.
Somebody said you got 15?
That's what it says on the board.
It's only a guideline.
Ah, gotcha. I one time came up to presented an audit report, It was right after another one. Actually, 120 people left the board meeting. I was like, wow, it was pretty exciting. No, anyway, thank you for having us. This is our first year auditing Marshalltown schools. I have been, I'm a partner with Hogan Hansen. I am from the Mason City office. I have been auditing governmental entities in Iowa since 1988, and we do several school districts every year. We do community colleges, cities, those type of things. It was a privilege to be able to come down here and to work on the audit. I want to hit a few things, and I will try to get this done in much less than 15 minutes, but I do want, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. But I'm going to go through pretty quickly and try to highlight what changed versus what stayed the same. If you take a look on page 3, what an auditor is hired to do is issue an opinion on your financial statements. The financial statements are put together by your business office staff, and they culminate in your certified annual report, which is done by September 15th. And then we offer an opinion on those financial statements. And our opinion is on the top 2 paragraphs of page number 3. And we issued what was called a qualified opinion, but the qualified opinion was on the discretely presented component unit. That's a fancy big word for the Marshalltown Schools Foundation, okay? We included that on the audit report this year, which is different than what's happened in the past. And the reason we did was because when you have an entity that they have to meet a couple of requirements to be included, even though they're not the same legal entity. They must be something that's significant to the financial statement, so that could be misleading if you don't include them. And they have to be providing all of their benefits, or substantially all of their benefits for the school or their students. Well, the foundation met those 2 requirements, and because of the activity they had in the fundraising for the Roundhouse, they met the significancy requirement, as they gave about $1.8 million last year. So our audit opinion says the financial statements on the Mason City Community School District Foundation have not been audited. We included them on the financial statements, but we did not audit them. So that's why they're a qualified opinion. That doesn't mean they're wrong, doesn't mean they're right. It means we took their information and put it on here to give more information, but we didn't audit those numbers, because that would have cost more money for the school and it would have provided basically no benefit. So that's the first paragraph there. In the second paragraph, it says, in our opinion, except for the effects of such adjustments, if any, if we had audited the foundation, everything was, the financial statements were fairly presented in all material respects for all the governmental activities and the business types activities of each major fund and the aggregate remaining fund information. That's an auditor like jumping up and doing a cheer saying, everything's great, okay? There was nothing that we found on the school district's financial statements that had anything misstated or anything that looked as it was inappropriate or anything like that. The other thing, besides issuing an opinion that we're required to do 3 things. Issue an opinion on the financial statements. We need to do tests to test the highest risk areas for fraud. And with the payroll issues that we've had in the past, one of the reasons that I came down on this audit, because I don't work on audits very much anymore myself, but when there happened to be misstatement in years prior, I came down and I did the payroll section. I haven't done the payroll section since I was 25 years old, I don't think. But because of the
Couple of years then?
long time, decades. I'm older than Paulette, who I won't even tell you how old she is. But one of the things I did was I personally looked at every single federal payroll deposits for the year, and didn't see anything out of line after the misstatements that had been happening in the previous year, because that was the highest risk area. And being as it's my name on the bottom line on these statements, it's something that I wanted to look at.
You mentioned an auditor's cheer.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give you 5 minutes to see the cheer.
Oh. The auditor's cheer, I'll read the opinion, that's where it would be. I want to make sure that's something that we address, because it was a problem area in the past, and we did not notice any problems in that area in the future. And I'll have to commend your district staff as far as getting those refunds back. Having worked with other governmental entities in the past, I was not very hopeful. So that was very good news to get all those back, and unexpected. So if you take a look, I'm not going to spend too much time on the numbers because they are several months old, but if you take a look on page 16, I want to explain a little bit as far as why we included the foundation. If you take a look about 2/3 of the way down, it says component unit school foundation. And the expenses, the $1.7 million, that $1.7 million, the vast majority of that were donations to the school district, okay? So I felt it would be misleading to not include that the vast majority of the expenses for the auditorium or for the foundation were material, and then they were recorded on the school district's books. It's very possible that we will not be including the foundation in the future, because they started the year with about if you take a look on the very bottom right-hand corner, they started the year with $1.9 million in their reserves, and they ended the year with $238,000. So they're nowhere near as significant to the district as they were during this time period. So it's very possible that they will not be on here next year, okay? As we go through, I'd like to take a look at a couple things. If you look on page 17, on the general fund, one of the things we always worry about is cash flow inside the general fund. At the end of the year, we had the top number, we had $11.5 million of cash. Approximately $2.2 million are due from other governments, so there was about $14 million available to pay current expenses, and the current expenses were $14 million, and the current expenses were just the line, the total liabilities below that, about $9.2 million. So adequate reserves, but not excessive by any stretch. And something to keep an eye on. If we do have a year of deficit, then we may hit somewhat of a cash flow crunch. The next thing to take a look at would be on page 21. These are the statements for with the business type activities. Those include your school nutrition fund and your health insurance fund. This is the balance sheet side of it, and you can see on the second line from the bottom, the nutrition fund has $1.1 million of net assets, net position at the end of the year. But of that $1.1 million, $300,000 of that is equipment, and we can't spend equipment. Now, the internal service, the health insurance fund, we have about $1.8 million left. Well, let's take a look at the next page to see if that's adequate or not, and how they're performing. On the enterprise fund, the nutrition fund, the one on the left, take a look at the third of the bottom line. They had a surplus for the year of $200,000. So that seems to be running well. We had $900,000 at the beginning of the year, ended up with $1.1 million. The internal service fund, the health insurance, we have a much larger amount of money that's running through there. If you take a look at the total operating expenses, we had $8.5 million running through the health insurance fund. At the end of the year, we had about $1.8 million of assets left. I mean, we have more than that. We have about $3 million of cash. We have about $1.1 million what they estimated claims incurred from June 30th that we haven't paid yet. So about $1.8 million. That's adequate for $8 million. But if we're going to continue to run a surplus, you're going to, and with the health insurance costs coming, just something to be aware of. And I don't know what your 2019-20 experience is, but if it's anything, we're self-funded too. If it's anything like our experience, we have to stick away more and more funds. So just something to keep an eye on for the future. Not an immediate concern, but something to keep in the back of your minds as you're budgeting for 2021 or 21-22. So With that, speaking of the budget, we'll flip all the way back to page 48. The important thing as far as the state of Iowa states is that each service area, functional service area is under budget, and each one of your functional areas were under budget. And you amended the budget during the year before it was exceeded. Just kind of an informational thing, on page 63 and 64, you'll see that where your federal funds are coming from. The vast majority of your federal funds, if you take a look on the top of page 63, are $2.8 million. That's the nutrition fund. If you remember, the nutrition fund had roughly $3.3 million running through. $2.8 million is the federal money, okay? The other large program that you have is the Title I money, which is just a hair down from that, the $1.3 million. The nutrition fund is a very complicated fund to administer, and there are about 62 different things that you have to, I went through and counted because I did that area too. 62 different things that you have to test for. And I normally find several findings when I did when we audit the nutrition fund, because it's complicated. Some of it's pretty detail oriented. Some of it's very statistical in nature as far as some of the specific testing that the school district staff have to do on applications. And I didn't find any findings. That is unusual for the first year that we come in and do an audit. And so I was very impressed with Lynn and her staff with how they manage the nutrition fund, because I always find something, and I didn't. So, and it's not from lack of looking. We spent about, before we went through our 2 layers of quality control review, we'd spent about 460 hours looking for stuff that's wrong. Okay, so we spent 460 hours looking for stuff that's wrong. I'll tell you what we found, okay? Take a look on page 70, okay? The first thing is a segregation of duties issues. This is a very common finding. You had it in the past. And it's something that something I want to work with your staff. I think you have designed your systems very well to perhaps get rid of this finding, because I do think you have adequately segregated your staff. You've been spreading out responsibilities. It's something I need to go through. I will tell you at the beginning of the year, because we have to do this opinion on the entire year. At the beginning of the year, the duties were not properly segregated. That doesn't mean they weren't doing a good job. I think we could have done better. And I think they did better during the year, and I think it got better. And it's something I'm going to work with Paulette to see if next year we don't have this finding at all, because there was a definite improvement in the procedures and in the safeguards. Safeguards over payroll processing, safeguards over making tax deposits. There was a finding last year by the state in the nutrition fund, and the nice thing is, it was corrected. You know, they found it, and now all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but the procedures were taken to correct that. So that was very encouraging for me as an auditor, saying, hey, somebody pointed out this weakness. We come back to next year and there's not that weakness anymore, okay? So we have 4 types of things that we're looking for findings. The first one, instances of noncompliance related to the financial statements. There were no instances. That would be an auditor cheer. There are no instances of noncompliance. So, and then we have internal control deficiencies, and that was a segregation of duties. And then findings and costs related to federal awards. There were no reported instances of noncompliance. That's where I always have something for the nutrition fund if I'm auditing it for the first time. And the second one is the segregation of duties, the same as we had for the other. The remaining things are things that we are required to report on. The only thing, there's some things that are disclosure. There's several comments that are disclosure and oriented, but the only thing that was a violation of the things that the state of Iowa requires us to report on is the very last one on page 73. And of all the findings we had, this one I would find would be the most serious. Not that nobody's going to have to pay anything back or anything else, but the Student Activity Fund used to be a catch-all for anything we didn't know where to put someplace else. We'd make a Student Activity Fund to account for it. Several years ago, the Department of Education put out very clear guidelines as far as what's not allowed in the Student Activity Fund. And we have several accounts in the Student Activity Funds which are not properly recorded in the Student Activity Fund. The problem with the Department of Ed's guidance is they said, don't put it in the Student Activity Fund. They didn't tell us where to put it. But we have several things that the Student Activity Fund has to be related to extracurricular, competing with other school districts or co-curricular activities, not things like anything that doesn't relate to those things. There's a lot of different little accounts that need to get cleaned up. And I don't know that, with the issues we had with the payroll and things, that wouldn't have been my top priority, but it's something that you should be aware of, okay? Please don't think it is not that we found things that were spent here shouldn't have been spent. That's not what we said. It's just that they're recorded in the Student Activity Fund, and they're not a proper student activity to be recorded in that fund. So that's all I have, and I took way too long. Any questions?
Just one, if you're not going to put these things in the student.
Would you use a
activity
microphone?
fund, would you create a separate fund? I can't hear you, sorry.
Use your microphone, please.
If you're not going to put these things in the student activity fund, would you just create a separate fund for that?
Some of them, it depends on the type of activity. Some of them can run through the general fund, depends on the type. There's probably a dozen different types of activities. Some could be in the general fund. Some should not be in the school district books at all, like they should be managed outside by an outside booster club or something like that. Some could perhaps go into a capital projects fund or something else. But it would depend on the specifics as far as where it goes. And I would say there were some of each, of all different kinds. Again, I also want to point out, that is an extremely common finding for the last 3 years. We spent one of my other clients is a Waterloo Community Schools, and we spent hours trying to figure out where to put these things. And quite frankly, sometimes there's no good place to put them, because if you put them in the general fund, I'm going to write your comment there. So, sometimes it's hard to know what to do with it. But I just get to be an auditor and say, don't do that. Nowhere in there does it say, here's how to do it. But that's not my role. That's Paulette's job.
Paulette, can I ask a question of you?
Yeah.
We've had issue in the past years with the quality of our audit, not with you as auditor, but some auditors ago. And do you think that the sample sizes, the audit work, the number of accounts they went in depth on was better, more, gave you more comfort than what we saw from our audit a couple of years ago?
Absolutely, unequivocally, yes.
Well, certainly this binder passes the weight test over the other binder.
It's called the ice pick test.
Yeah.
If you can't get through it.
You passed that, yeah. And so you feel good about the quality of the work that was done here versus work that we've had done in the past? Okay. Also, there was a page in here, I don't know if you made this, that gave our ratios.
Yes.
And the ratio that jumped out at me was our solvency ratio, which we've had issue with in the past. I assume that the money we received from the IRS is not included in these ratio numbers. If you had to recalculate our solvency ratio today, would it look better?
With putting that $600,000 back, no, it wouldn't make much difference because we're talking about a $65 million budget.
So then give me some comment or flavor about what your thoughts are about our solvency ratio.
Our board policy indicates that our target solvency ratio is between 8 and 10%. And yes, I put those in there in case this question came up. At the end of fiscal 19, our solvency ratio was at 4.6%. So we are a little bit below that board policy, but there's been several years of low supplemental state aid and financial challenges with all districts. Increasing our solvency ratio is going to take a little bit of work. Our spending authority, which is also on that sheet, your most important financial measure is your spending authority balance. Your spending authority is not found anywhere in the financial statement audit. Our spending authority balance is at a very healthy 24%. We have the authority to spend, we just don't have the cash to spend. So we have to try to get our solvency ratio a little bit higher. And then the other fiscal management target that's in our board policy is the days net cash. And I think we're at about 66, 68 days.
Is what I calculated.
Net cash at the end of the year. Our board recommendation is between 60 and 75. That's because we don't get any state aid during July and August, so we have to have enough money in the bank on June 30th to pay our $4 million monthly payrolls and all the other bills to get us through until we get state aid again in September.
I think on your solvency ratio, the 600,000 on a $65 million budget, it's about 1 point. It's about 1%. So, I mean, it would have some effect, if that money's just coming in and it's just, boom, 600 and some odd thousand, drop it in here, it maybe 1%. It's a significant increase, but not huge.
And that revenue did come back to us in fiscal year '20. So that is, you might see that or might notice that on the monthly financials as a refund of prior year expenditures. So that will play into the number for this year.
Other questions? Thank you.
All right,
you,
thank
sir.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're up again.
All right. Now that we're done talking about last year, let's start talking about next year. So we have some new board members this year, and we're starting next year's budget process. We just kind of wanted to give you guys a high-level overview of some factors that drive this budgeting process that we're going to be going through over the next couple of months. You may remember some of this information from the financial sessions that you attended at the State School Board Convention in November. But I may be repeating some things. You can go to the next slide, please. So there are two main factors that drive our budget. One is certified enrollment, and the other is supplemental state aid. Our enrollment generates our funding, and the supplemental state aid, which I will refer to as SSA quite frequently, is part of the school aid formula and drives that calculation. The certified enrollment is the count that we take of students on October 1st of each year. So what we're looking at for next year's budget is the October 1st, 2019 enrollment numbers that we talked about, I think, in November. And for the supplemental state aid, that is something that the legislature sets each year. That is the major policy decision that they make, as school aid is the biggest part of the state budget. And it is about 42% of our state's budget. Couple things here. The governor released her budget recommendation in January, middle of January, and her recommendation was for a 2.5% increase in supplemental state aid for next year. I have a little note on there for the fiscal years. I wanted to just explain, make sure that everybody understands we operate on fiscal years, which are July 1 through June 30th. So the budget that we are talking about for next year would be from July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, and that's what we call fiscal year 21, or FY 21. We are currently in FY 20, fiscal year 20, okay? The UEN, so the governor's recommendation for 21, fiscal year 21 is 2.5%. The Urban Education Network, which is a group of, I think, 15 or 19, 17 largest school districts in the state, their recommendation is 3.75, as well as the School Administrators of Iowa is recommending 3.75. And just to give you a little background here, for this year, the governor recommended a 2.3% increase in SSA, and we actually got 2.06 approved by the legislature. So just because the governor recommends something doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to happen. Right now, the House has recommended a 2.5 increase, and the Senate is sitting at a 2.1 increase. You can go to the next slide, please. So this is just a very high-level, simple math overview. When we talk about new money, this is the annual increase in regular program budget, or the other way to think about it, it's an indicator of additional funding that school districts receive to cover increased costs that we obviously incur year over year. While this new money figure might sound like a big number, it certainly isn't allowing districts to keep pace with the school inflation that we need. So for fiscal 20, our district cost per pupil was $6,911. A 2.5% increase in supplemental state aid would equate to $172 per student, for a cost per pupil of $7,083. So if we took that number times our certified enrollment from last year of 5,420, that would give us regular program budget of $38.4 million for next year. For this year, our regular program budget was about $37.3 million. So that difference, that $1,057,000, that's what we're talking about when we continually refer to new money. Okay? The new money that we had for this year, with that 2.06% that was approved, was $369,000. The thing that you have to remember about this increase in supplemental state aid is that just because it's a 2.5% increase for the state doesn't necessarily mean it's a 2.5% increase for each district, because it also is driven by enrollment numbers. This is a chart that IASB provided, and I think it's a good visual. When I started in school business several years ago, it was normal to get a 4% increase each year. I don't know, can you see that? Okay. In the last 10 years, we have only seen an increase over 2.5% one time. So this is really indicative of the struggles that all schools are facing. We're expected to reduce class sizes. We're expected to add new programs. We're expected to compete with the private sector on hiring, all of these things. But the funding just has not been consistent and stable for the last 10 years. It's kind of been all over the place. The next slide shows you some different options. If we were to, this is specific to Marshalltown Community School District. So if we had a 1% increase in SSA, our new money would be $498,000. We're targeting the 2.5%, which is the $1,057,000. If you look down at 4%, that would be $1.6 million. That would be a lot easier to offset the increased costs that we experience each year with the $1.6 million. And I think 2.1 which is what the Senate is sitting at, would mean we would have about $905,000 in new money. That was a big sigh.
Yeah.
Because this slide is so incredibly hard for you all to see. I printed it out for you. This data also comes from the Iowa State Association of School Boards, and I think it's a really good visual that helps people to understand that 2.5% increase statewide does not necessarily mean 2.5% to each district. If you look at the top line that's highlighted in green for fiscal '21, we plugged in there the 2.5% increase in supplemental state aid. Because of our increased enrollment this past fall, that would actually equate to a 2.8% new money for our district. Vice versa, the line just below that for fiscal '20, it was a 2.06% increase in supplemental state aid, but because we had declining enrollment, we only experienced a 1% increase. So we had new money last year of $369,000. The final slide, this is just a kind of an overall illustration of what we really need to support our budgets. 2.5% gets a lot of people excited these days when we hear about 2.5% increase in supplemental state aid. But again, we're very limited in what we can do with 2.5%. If we take a look just at our fiscal '20 budget and break it down into big segments, staff salaries, employee benefits, and the other non-personnel costs, we can put in reasonable expected increases into that spreadsheet there and come up with easily about $1.7 million in increased costs. So that's why 4% would be so much better than 2.5%, but 2.5% is definitely better than 1, obviously. So this is what we look at. The legislature is supposed to set supplemental state aid by February 13th. We are hoping that since it's an election year, that it actually gets done. They're not very far apart between the 2.1 and 2.5, so we hope that that gets done in a timely fashion so that we can start to frame our budget for next year around, what we can afford to spend, what we can't afford to spend, what we want our fiscal management targets to be going forward.
Questions for Paulette?
Paulette, on this very last slide, you have a total estimated increase of $1,728,000 for your, right? Mm-hmm. And on the slide before it, you showed new money of a little less than 1.1. So that shows your $600,000 gotta find from somewhere else, right? Mm-hmm. There goes your IRS refund, right?
This is a very oversimplified illustration. So like the 1.7% that I used on staff salaries, it costs 1.7%. It costs about $450,000 on an annual basis to move to advanced teachers on the teacher salary schedule. So that's why I'm using 1.7% there and just applied that to all salaries for the entire district. This is a very oversimplified illustration. It's a lot more detailed than this when we get down to it.
I get it.
But
The point is that you don't have enough money, new money, to even with increasing enrollment, to
Yes.
keep up with expenses that we know we're going to have.
Correct.
The increases from the state annually have hardly kept pace with cost of living increases. And
They have not kept pace at all with what schools are needing.
Thank you very much. We'll be hearing more, I'm sure.
Yes, you will.
Mr. Manus? I think that microphone has shut off, so you need to turn it on up on top.
That button right there on top. You should be able to just press that. You hold it down. Well, we had it working a little bit ago. Okay.
Better.
Okay. I'll actually use it. Thanks for having us tonight. We've got some stuff we're kind of proud of, and we narrowed it down to 3. So we'll talk a little bit about what we've got here. I'll kind of start and then let the experts take over from there.
Would you introduce everyone at the table?
I sure will. To my left is Miss Estabrook. She is a first grade teacher. And to my immediate right is Miss Schmidt. I almost messed that up again. She is a third grade teacher. I got that part right. And then Miss Chima is our school counselor. Well, I'll start. Last year we were a designated ESSA school. And so what we did, we had some great meetings, pretty in-depth meetings. And one of the things that came out of our meetings was a need to come back around to something we used to do, and that was have vertical teams. And when we
Could
talk-
you, in a couple of quick sentences, explain what an ESSA school is for our new board members?
Sure. Last year, and of course, you just saw last week, the reports came out for this year, but when it first came out last year, we were designated a school that basically needed more help. So we were, us and a couple of other schools, we went to an institute in June that allowed us we put together a school leadership team and had some pretty in-depth meetings with our AEA reps and with some folks in Des Moines, and they were tough meetings. There was nothing easy about them. They were pretty stressful, but out of it came a lot of good stuff for us. Jennifer's going to talk about some of them. They're going to talk about some of them, and I'll start with, again, the vertical teams. We have meetings in school. We discuss things all the time about our data and everything, but we discuss it at grade levels and bring it back together. So what a vertical team allows us to do is to bring together those representatives of preschool through 4th grade on the same team so that we can discuss what's happening in those different grade levels for different areas at the same time. So we get a better understanding of, what are we doing that needs to help the grade above, where are the gaps, et cetera. So we have 3 vertical teams. It's the next slide, please. We have an SEL, social emotional learning vertical team, a math vertical team, and a literacy vertical team. We try to meet monthly. We started last month with our ESSA timeline. We planned on starting those in January, so we're right on our timeline. Our SEL team, which is led by Ms. Chima, meets and they talk about our behavioral data in school. They talk about different incidents that happen. They talk about where they happen. They're talking about what time they happen. And we start looking to see if we see trends that way. It also incorporates our PBIS piece in our school. So they're looking at our expectations, everything from are the videos that we use with our kids that we create, are they helpful? Do they need to be more in depth? Do we need to update them? So they take all of those things and they look at those things pretty in depth and bring those back to the entire team in the school every month when we meet. Math and literacy kind of take a different approach. In the past, we've been able to do an item analysis when we've gotten our state assessment. But with the new assessment, we do not have that luxury anymore. So I looked at it a little bit differently. So when you look at those tests, everything's broken down by domain scores. So I took the average of each 3rd and 4th grade's domains, and we looked at those 5 domains for math and literacy, and we took the lowest ones for the first meeting, and we backward tracked all the standards. We took all the standards that were available in those domains and went backwards to see, okay, so this was a weakness here, what's an area that, and then we used that, and we used our curriculum, and we saw how that curriculum related to those standards, and we basically tried to look and see where there were some gaps that we might have missed, or some things that we needed to emphasize. Math, for instance, we did find a pretty significant piece that will help us in the future, and it was just because those standards are not considered essential standards, and with our PLC work, we don't look at those in depth. So we were missing it, and sure enough, that it was showing up in our domains, that was a weakness for us. So being able to really take a deeper dig at those standards is really starting to help. And again, we will try to meet monthly and bring that information back, and then through math in our PLCs to take that information and see how we can strengthen our core there, and in literacy the same way. Next place, we're going to go to Ms. Chima and Ms. Schmidt, and they're going to talk to us about some things they've started this year with positive action.
Okay, so with Positive Action is the new guidance curriculum that K-12 is using in all the buildings. But the main focus of Positive Action is to start with a positive thought that leads to a positive action, that then leads to a positive feeling, and then it goes back to a positive thought. So it's a circle. And so Mrs. Schmidt actually came to me at the beginning of the year and said she wanted to try to do something with that, and so we started the Kindness Club. And so it is our third graders. They actually filled out an application to become that, and we started with 10, and now we're at 20-ish or so kids. But we meet twice a month, and they are spreading kindness through that positive thought and actions and then feelings to people in our school, and then we also have done something in our community.
So they put together like treat
I'm going
bags.
to pull the microphone over.
Sorry. They put together treat bags for the police and firefighters in Marshalltown. I think we made around 40 bags, and then we had a couple firefighters and one of the police officers come to the school, and the kids delivered it to them and just thanked them for what they were doing around the community. So we've done that. We've done posters around the school. We have tried getting other classrooms involved in also spreading kindness, so it's not just our club doing it, but also asking other classrooms to take another step and do something else. So.
And then these are just some pictures of the students. So the one in the upper left is obviously, or your right, I guess, if you're looking at it that way, is the firefighter and police officers. When they came, the students delivered them. And then this is just groups of students working with them, doing this. And one of the things that we asked the students to, when they applied for this, is what do they feel like kindness is, and how do they do that? And so they, filled those out, and a lot of them said, showing it to other people. And so doing, kind acts, nice acts to them. So this is just them spreading it out in groups and or classrooms in the building.
One of the big things that came out of our ESSA plan was an emphasis on math, and some pretty major changes have been made and some additions this year, and Ms. Esterbrook will start that conversation.
Last year with my team of first grade, there's 3 of us on first grade, we got our fall screeners test back, and our math scores were 33% proficient. So we decided we would do a book study on increasing the students' number sense, and it was actually this book. It's called Number Sense Routines by Jessica Shumway. And basically what they are is 5 to 10 minutes just to get them to interact with numbers more, to decompose them, to take them apart, to put them back together, to put them in sequence order. And so we started this in October, and then the screener comes around again in the winter, and we went from 33 to 71% proficient. We were pretty excited. So we and we just were reading chapters as we were going and adding things as we were going. This was definitely a work in progress as we were going through this. So then in the spring, again, we saw another increase. They were 77% proficient. After the summertime, they're now second graders. They took the same screener again, and they maintained that at 76, and they have went up since then. So what has happened is this Number Sense routine has now become a book study for the entire building, and we're all doing it.
So, and then, again, this is just some of the routines that you see. It's a first grade routine on the left side as I'm seeing it, and it's a kindergarten routine on the right side as we're seeing it. So the big thing is, are we seeing this, is it working? I've got some data, just a little bit from our winter screening, which we just completed last week. All 5 grades grew, and K1, our primary, which obviously that's the area we want to get that base down there and strong, so that as we move along, in 3 years, we don't really have to worry too much about doing these kind of routines because it'll already be set. Our K1 kids, 84% met or exceeded the growth expected, and K and 1 actually have a 21-point and a 23-point gain they're expected to make. It's a pretty significant gain. Of those kids, 55% achieved accelerated growth. We had 49 kids that were considered high risk school-wide in the fall. We now have 24, so we cut that number in half. As I said, expected growth in kindergarten is 21 points. The median growth in kindergarten this time was 36 points. In first grade, the expected growth is 23 points, and the median growth was 30 points. And all 5 grades met, or actually all 5 grades exceeded expected growth from fall to winter on their math, A-math and early math. So, it's the new variable that we have added school-wide. So we see that it's definitely making some positive gains in everything that we're doing. So we'll continue that, and then our ESSA teams this year will look more of a focus on literacy this coming summer, so we can implement some things to strengthen our literacy core next year.
Questions for the Anson team?
I haven't, I can't remember hearing a presentation where the growth is as high as the numbers you just quoted, like 20, 30 points. Can you remember, Sean, any numbers of growth that were better than that? That's like outstanding. Like, can you give me some sense of what is it that I did different this year than last that produced such fantastic results? You ought to be really proud of yourself,
And they should. The teachers have worked hard. And one of the big things is when we undertook this book study, and we did this after hours. We did this 4 to 6, 5 to 6 at night. It was completely voluntary. We had everyone there. And the ones that weren't there studied on their own. So I think one of the things that helps is the attitude and the buy-in. The teachers believe in what we're doing. They believe that what they're doing is going to help their kids. And in the end, that's what we want to do. Everything we want to do is to help our kids. And when you work hard, and when if you were to come and see these, I think Sean might have seen them.
That's what I was going to ask. This was the number since this is on the visit in November, whenever that was. Yeah.
It's like a 5-10 minute thing daily, and it's nothing exciting. They're counting forward, they're counting backwards, they're picking a point like, we're going to start at 111. What are the numbers between 111 and 122? And just, these are not things that are going to excite you, but the kids, they do them every day. Mm-hmm. And, when I go and I watch a lesson, when I watch kindergarten, I was in a kindergarten classroom yesterday, and they were starting subtraction, the very first day of subtraction. So the teacher said, so we have 5 of our friends here, and we take 3 away. How many do we have left? 2. It's just, the automaticity is coming, and it's something that we've been missing as far as that number fluency. So when the teachers believe in what they're doing and then they see these results, it makes my job really easy. I just sit back and say, look what they're doing.
Good, great.
Yeah.
I'll just try to walk through the timeline again on this. The federal government was required under the Every Student Succeeds Act back in 2018. Our state had to submit a plan for how they're going to create a report card. The last administration of the old Iowa assessments, which would have been in winter, spring of 2018, then was where the determinations were made if schools were labeled as comprehensive improvement needed or targeted improvement needed, and targeted essentially meant in one or more of the subgroup populations that you didn't quite meet the target. So test in spring of 18, December you find out where you fell on the report card for ESSA. These guys started working as teams right away in the early winter of 2019 with the AA and DE support through SAMI work. All of our buildings that were identified started that process. Then again, in the spring of 2019, now we get the new Iowa tests, which are much more rigorous than the old tests. The teams then go to participate in a multi-day workshop in Des Moines in the summer in June, and then we just find out, recently what the first scores on those new tests were, which were then what created those report card levels that could go from exemplary to high performing down to priority or needs improvement. And so it's been a whirlwind, really. I mean, you guys have done unbelievable work in a pretty short period of time, and we're really excited to see what, this spring's test results will be, which I would anticipate we'll get those back much quicker. It won't be December, January, but probably early fall at the latest, I would imagine, so. Good job.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Taronis. And crew.
Good evening.
Hello.
A very talented group of young ladies here from our Healthcare Careers Club. We have a sophomore, Arlette Yepes, seniors, Taylor Duff and Aida Almanza. I sent a video over. Do we know if that's going to be playing? Anyone know? If not, we're good. Pardon me? I sent it to Gabby. Let's
see if we.
Well, I think we wanted you to see the video because you'll see the faces of many of our students in our Healthcare Careers Club. We've had a lot of activities that we have participated in this year. But I think I'd like to let these three ladies simply share what the Healthcare Careers Club has meant to them. We have two that are on the verge of graduating, and one who's kind of beginning her years as far as taking advantage of the opportunities, the coursework that we have available at Marshalltown High School. So why don't we start with Aida?
The button on top there.
You have to hold it down a little bit.
Okay. Well, my name is Aida Almanza. I am a senior at Marshalltown High School. I have been in the club for 2 years. The club, what the Health Careers Club has meant to me is the experiences and the motivation of going into the medical field. I will be attending in the fall Iowa State University, majoring in kinesiology and health for human medicine. Throughout my whole high school career, I have taken the PLTW medical classes, which have given me kind of an overview of what I will be studying later in my career. And I have been really motivated to become a surgeon, and I have made my decision. I would like to become a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon, once I attend medical school. So,
thank you, Aida.
I can tell you that my orthopedic surgeon has made a lot of money.
My name's Taylor Duff. I'm a senior at Marshalltown High School, too. I've been in the Health Careers Club for 4 years. Well, this is my 4th year. It has showed me so many different careers that I didn't know were available to people in the medical field. From Health Careers Club, I have learned that I want to be a pediatric nurse. We've gone on so many trips to different hospitals, not only in Iowa, but we've gone out of state too. We not only do we learn about those careers, we also get to see different areas where you can work, like the hospitals, doctors' offices. We've gone to nursing homes, and it's showed us that there are so many careers that even if what you don't choose to go into, you don't get there, there are so many careers that you can get to from that one career. So, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Arlette Yepez, and I am a sophomore at MHS. So I would first off like to say that the Health Careers Club has given me many opportunities, and it's just opened my eyes to the many experiences that I'm going to be able to have the opportunity to have in my future years. I hope in the club. It's just allowed me to have many hand-on experiences and in-person personal inquiries with the different staff at the many establishments that we have had the opportunity to visit and go to. Our trips are always very educational, and I always come back learning and talking to Mr. Toronis about all the exciting little facts that I picked up throughout there, and I'm always able to make new connections with people and the staff at the hospitals that we visit. Excuse me, in our first big end of the year trip that I was able to attend last year, we had the opportunity to go to Chicago. It was just a very eye-opening experience. It was an amazing trip, and I learned so many things, and I was just in awe of how big the hospital was, and I didn't know as a freshman that I could have so much fun in a club that was associated with high school, since it's very stressful. But learning so much about something that I'm passionate about and wanting to go into the medical field after I graduate high school and I continue with my education into college, it's just helped to put that into a different reality for me, that that's what I'm going to be doing, and that's what I would like to do one day. And like, I see myself in the staff, and I know that's what I want to do, and it just helps affirm that passion within me whenever we get to go on these trips. And so the club has just brought a lot into my life, and I know I'm going to be able to carry all those experiences with me throughout my years, and I hope to continue my membership in the club for my future years to come until I'm a senior like these two.
Awesome. Thank you, Arlette. So we'll see a video of just other faces and the experiences that we've had this year. planned, this year we have planned a trip to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Been working with her name is Jolene Young from the Mayo Clinic School of Health Sciences. And so they have put together just a fantastic opportunities for our kids to learn about. The areas this year will be respiratory care, pharmacy technician, histology. That's going to be a new one. Histology is the microscopic anatomy of cell tissue. So, we are used to seeing, being involved in activities where we look at things and look at body parts with our own eyes. But now we're going to take a look at cells microscopically. So that will be something new for us. And then some activities regarding diagnostic imaging. So we have a trip planned for March 26th through the 28th, and I think you have the information up there. I don't know if I need to read through it, but we are simply making a request for our end of the year trip to Mayo Clinic. It would be an out-of-state trip. We have still some funding to finish up on, and I have the need for a couple of drivers. Mike, if you'd like to join us, school board members, we'd like to invite you. If you'd like to join, we have a couple of spots still available. So that's our presentation.
Questions for Mr. Toronis or the students?
How many, if you said it, I missed it. How many do you have? How many?
Microphone, please.
How many in the club do you have?
We have 120 students who have signed up and participate kind of off and on. In this activity or in this field experience, they would allow us to take 30. So the first 30 to sign up, they also had to meet requirements along the way. And so the 30 students who are attending met the requirements needed.
I've been to the Mayo Clinic as a patient, and it is the most amazing medical facility I think you'll ever see in your whole life. So, it's be a cool thing.
Thank you.
Do you have, just an average, do you have many students that end up doing any study at MCC?
Doing the courses at MCC?
Yeah, any healthcare related stuff there?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We have many students. Most of the students in our Health Careers Club have participated in I think you've taken the medical terminology, the human growth. What are the other two courses? Do you remember?
Human anatomy, CNA.
Yep, your nurse's aid class, medical terminology, intro to health occupations. So yes, we absolutely are taking advantage of those courses, those dual credit courses.
Other questions?
So if you go on to careers that fulfill you and you happen in the course of things to make a lot of money, will you remember your school district when you
Thank you.
get there? Good deal.
May I have a motion to approve the out-of-state field trip request to Rochester, Minnesota for March 26th to the 28th?
Move for approval.
Second.
Miller, who?
Bob.
Unteed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Fun.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hey. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Jam the Gym. I didn't get to go to it, but I wanted to. It was February 1st, and it was for high school seniors, and 2 seniors won $500 scholarships to MCC. The next thing is scholarships. Our counseling office does a really good job about sending out scholarship opportunities to us almost every week. And so the seniors are receiving a ton of opportunities to get money. Upcoming athletic events. Today there's wrestling and basketball
Tomorrow there's bowling. Thursday there's wrestling again. Friday there's nothing going on. And Saturday there's swimming and basketball.
Just classes, right?
Yeah, it's senior night. So spring sports are coming up. So we've been having a lot of sign-up meetings, open gyms, and then scheduling for the weight room. The high school staff is going to start hanging signs that are mostly directed towards the seniors now to the end of the year, just kind of encouraging us to keep pushing through.
How many days do you have left?
I have no idea.
You're not counting them yet?
Is this yours? Okay. Second semester. So classes for second semester started on January 21st. Students had up to Friday, January 23rd to change their schedule. This is a quote. I'm very excited about my new electives, especially my MCC classes. I'm also looking forward to the start of track season.
So MHS after prom night will be held at Pizza Ranch on February 12th. The times will be 5 to 8 p.m. and 100% of the tips will be donated to the after prom.
These are Diana's slides, so I can't answer any of your questions if you have them. So science-bound, scholars will begin their career projects, a requirement to continue in the pre-college program. On February 12th, science-bound seniors will present their personal statements in front of staff and parents. This is a requirement to continue with the science-bound program. Several science-bound seniors volunteered to be judges for the 8th grade science-bound science fair. They paired off into two and judged the science fair projects based on how well they answered questions and followed the scientific method. The fair was held at Emerson on January 24th, 2020.
So French Club, along with French Honor Society, will be selling key and lock concept notes that will be purchased and then delivered to loved ones during Valentine's Week. For every lock sold, an additional one will also be made and used as a display in honor of the Love Lock Bridge in Paris. It's a fun way to tie two different cultures together. French is also looking for approval to decorate lockers with little masks for Mardi Gras. Band. State Jazz was held at the high school last Monday. Student participation is always welcome when it comes to hosting bands or running scores, and student participation was strong this year. Our annual pasta dinner was the following day with an amazing turnout. 1,500 was made in profit, and all the dessert even ran out. This was our last fundraiser before our trip next month. The Iowa State Honor Band will take place this Friday. 4 select students, Evelyn Rangel, Heather Junk, Rebecca Stone, and I will participate. And then Southeast Polk Jazz will be the 15th, and the Iowa Wild game that was postponed due to weather will now be on Valentine's Day. XLP updates. Robotics scored second in league meet and advanced to super qualifiers. If they do well enough at super qualifiers, they could move on to state. Math team participated in the American Math Contest, which is a 70-minute, 25 multiple choice test. It assesses the best students in the nation, and select students move on to participate in the American Math Olympiad. LOL had the pleasure to welcome Hunter Davenport from the Meskwaki Nation on Tuesday, January 28th, during lunch to discuss his chapter in We the Interwoven, titled Black Thunder, a Meskwaki Story. He told us about his culture, life, and artwork, and left us with the message that even when life is hard and it seems like nothing is right, there is hope and a reason to keep pushing forward. Lastly, SWE, or SWE, is the Society of Women Engineers, a team must comprise of 5 or more members, and this year's team will be Grace, Kaisa, Carly, Yesenia, Leticia, and I. The SWE challenge is to address a community issue and then come up with an effective way to solve it. This year's focus deals with environmental or economic issues, but as a team we took an environmental approach to take a step forward towards prairie restoration. 99.9% of the original landscape that was here hundreds of years ago is now gone, resulting in many extirpated animals. The soil quality as the years go on is also a concern, and planting the prairies could help restore some of the topsoil. If all is successful, there will be a conference in March where many well-respected women engineers will attend, and we will get a chance to present our presentation with the potential of a $1,000 fund to execute our idea. It's intended to inspire girls to pursue a STEM career and gain confidence as they go on.
So is your issue assigned to you, or do you choose your issue?
No, we choose it. We looked at several factors statewide and then focused it on the community and realized there's not a lot of prairies here personally, and realized it can be a goal.
Other questions for the ladies?
What is LOL?
LOL stands for Literature Over Lunch.
I'll confess, I'm on the library board. Do you do anything with the library?
Yes, we meet with Joa.
Oh, all right,
It's
good.
usually once a month, and we read different books. So the author visit was the second book from the same. We read another chapter a couple months ago over Antonia Rivera, and this is the second one over Hunter Davenport.
Now you know the questions to ask when you go to the library board meeting.
What? Yeah, that's right.
Of course.
We have 3 acres of restored prairie that is it's not part of our property, but it is adjacent to it. And I know he spent over 40 years restoring it, so it is an interesting project.
Well, one of the things I forgot to share is that as the SWE challenge, we have to incorporate elementary, or not necessarily elementary kids, but we do have to involve kids from different schools in the project itself, which is a neat little thing because I personally love children.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks a lot.
I printed out some copies because, as you know, it was amended a little bit.
And that also passes the ice pick test?
It looks like it a little bit. We can recycle these. So I don't have to
That's okay.
do every other pair or whatever.
You have to share.
Okay.
It's close.
It's close?
We need to take a break here.
It's close.
This document will be officially, when it's completed, published on our school website for parents to review as students get ready to go through the registration process. We do not make the ice pick test for every student, and in fact, the counselors prefer an online version, which we have created in a Google site for the students who all have Chromebooks, and so they can easily access those that way. So I will just begin to go through with some of the things that were updated. On page 3, my notes to the students really focus on being Bobcat ready, so that was updated. In the table of contents, you can see the highlighted courses. One was deleted, others were added there. So we're pretty excited. And then Dr. Schutte mentioned an amendment, so the ag classes are highlighted in there as well as fire science, and a new class will be technical math. There's some things that are still going on with formatting, as you can see in this document. Once I take out all of the deletions and everything, then I'll spend a little bit more time cleaning that up, but I didn't want to spend too much time doing that before I got all those edits out of there. The next update that occurs is on page 12, and you would have noticed in the table of contents that desktop publishing was deleted in the business part of the program there. no students have enrolled in that course in the last 3 years, so we went ahead and deleted that. Their skill set is pretty more advanced than just regular desktop publishing nowadays. Next edit occurs on page 22 in the English department section. Speech has grown in its popularity. We have quite a few students who participate in a variety of speech extracurricular activities, but it's also part of the English curriculum in terms of their presentation and being able to speak to the public. It was exciting. I know Dr. Schutte participated. I did as well in an English 12, and Sean did too. In English 12 semester presentations of the work that they had learned, and it was amazing to watch our students, and some were very embarrassed, some were scared, and they just needed a lot of encouragement, and so they did a really nice job of presenting to, oh yeah, Bob's with me in my group, yeah. So it's a class that kids need so that they become more comfortable in that skill set, in 21st century skill set of speaking to the public. The next edit is on page 44, and basically we're adding the Introduction to Industrial Arts Technology, so that's that first course in the Industrial Arts Technology. This is going to be about 6 different modules that will introduce students to what's available in Industrial Arts Technology, so they can choose from welding, machining, construction. We also have plumbing, and we've added another class, which is towards the end on the next page 46, which is small engine and basic automotive maintenance. We have a lot of students who are really interested in that kind of thing, whether it's working on the motors for lawnmowers or snow blowers, which we used to offer that at the high school, was maintenance and preparation for winter storage or summer storage or at the end, whatever. So we'd like to see the kids get back into that. We currently have 3 students who travel every day to Grinnell for the automotive program there as part of the Iowa Valley Collaborative. So it's pretty cool. That's how interested they are in automotive. So we missed that. Used to be right over there across from the high school, not too far. I forgot to put this in yellow, but it's on page 52, one of the last math classes that has been added. It's called Technical Math. We have students who have a need to understand more things like calipers, how to measure with calipers, or especially when they're working on welds and they're working in machining, those fine measurements that they have to practice. We just heard from the Health Careers Club. That's a different kind of math that they need to be able to do with CCs and different types of heart rate monitors and measuring dosages for patients and things like that. So technical math will address a lot of career areas, and we have seen that increase in the number of kids enrolling in that at MCC as part of their certificates or diploma programs. Almost to the end here. Last edit. Couple edits. It's really big. It has to do with Project Lead the Way. It's in the specialized section, starting on my page 76 in your printout. Project Lead the Way Computer Science Essentials would be a first-year course to introduce a 4-course pathway in computer science. We've had a couple of computer science classes, but now we're really trying to break it out so that there's engineering pathway. We already have a biomedical sciences pathway, and now we will have a clearly defined computer science pathway. So the first year would be Computer Science Essentials, and then we've had on the books Computer Science Principles and Computer Science A, as well as AP Computer Science, and then a capstone class would be Cyber Security. Doesn't that sound like fun? Sounds like a lot of fun. So pretty exciting there for us to have that. And as was mentioned a couple of times in other meetings, we now have a K-12 computer science program. So we're moving ahead and becoming a district of distinction. And also in this section, let's see, where did I put that? I'm sorry, we're probably going to have to go back to family consumer science. We are adding the fire science pathway in a collaboration with Kirkwood, which is new for us. That's the closest fire science program that's available. Though that just closed or cleaned up for us this last Friday, the coursework that's in there. Starts out with 2 courses that are in, let me just find that. They're online courses that first year. We're going to really be marketing this to our sophomores. And I think, did I put that in? Where did I put that? Sorry, thought I had that marked. It is right after the project Lead the Way. So it starts out with 2 online courses that they would take as juniors, but then as their senior year, they would need to have a block period open so that they could take through MCC EMT 1 and 2 and their practicum through EMT. And then the second semester of the senior year, they would take Firefighter 1, which would be taught by our local Chris Cross from the fire department, which is pretty exciting. It's another great collaboration that we have. We already have one going with the police department. Now we have a fireman that'll work with our students. And they end up with a certificate from Kirkwood for fire service. They could go on to, that's an entry-level position for firefighting, also works well for volunteer firefighting if they want to, or they could pursue their associate's degree from Kirkwood in fire science. So a lot of opportunities there. The other one that we've been working on has to do with, where is that fire science here? Sorry. Has to do with our meat cutting apprenticeship with Fairway. We just also cleared that up. I am excited to say that we were finally going to get ag in the high school. Finally get ag in the high school. I've been kind of wanting to do that, and didn't grow up on a farm, but here we are living in this country, in this part of the state, and all of this ag around us. And so Ag 1 will be offered. That's under, right, it's the very first department, sorry. Let me get that for you. Right before art. And that is on page 2, which is weird because it comes after page 26. Sorry. It's weird. Anyway, Ag 1, Intro to Agriculture, is open to any student to prepare them for experiences in agriculture. And then Animal Science is a required course for the meat cutting apprenticeship. Did you find that, Adam, right after? It's right after page 26. It turns to page 2. So don't ask me why it did that, but you're almost there, You're almost there. Right after this section, right here. Oh, it's right before that. Oh, no, so this isn't the printed one, sorry. After we just did all that. So animal science is required in the meat cutting apprenticeship, and then students will be able to begin their meat cutting online class and working at Fairway at the same time in their senior year. So there's not a lot of students that'll be interested in that, but there are a lot of students who'll be interested in animal science. So those students who are pre-veterinary would like to maybe get involved in that or check out if they want to be involved in animal science, or there's just so many opportunities in ag. I just don't think our students have ever even explored that. They haven't had a chance to explore because they don't know what it is. So this is really not what kids will look at. It'll be online, and they'll have the link to it, and parents can look at it too, as we keep saying, your kids are registering. Have you asked them, what are they registering for? So they can look at that. I did share a link with Adam, if you wouldn't mind pulling that up. We put all of this information into a Google site, and it's still in progress. Class meetings are this Friday. So we think this fits better. It's that 2021 MHS course manual. Do you see that? Can you Google that, Adam? 2021. Just Google 20-21 MHS. Oh, no, you got to do 2020, I think. 2020-2021. No, I think you got to go 2021. Hopefully it'll pop up. MHS space. MHS, there it is. Is that it? No. We're looking for the Google site. Did I not give you? So just try typing in 2020-2021 space MHS. I think you got to have a space in there, bud.
I found it.
Course guide. You found it? So what's really exciting about the Google site, if you can see it, Sean, is that it's laid out by the career clusters, the 16 Iowa career clusters, so that if a student has an interest in ag, did you find the Marshalltown one, Sean?
I'm not sure, hang on.
I found it.
What's it called?
It is called, what did I actually search? 2021 course, back here.
That's last year's
Course
guide.
manual, Marshalltown Senior High.
And does it have the career clusters on there?
Let me look.
So because
so.
our students are so technological, what we did is we created a Google site, and then they just click on their career cluster. So if they're interested in emergency services, which is where fire science would fall, when they click on that, it will take them to the courses that they need to take at the high school that will lead them to this pathway. And it's literally a flow chart. First you take this, then you take that, and then it can fit into any one of these college classes. So we want to lay out a path that makes sense to them. That doesn't mean they can't get off the path. They certainly can get off the path, but leads them to purposeful courses at the college that they would take and transfer to a four-year school if they do that at MCC, if that makes sense. So our students, sorry that didn't, I'll send that to Theron, and he can share that with you all, so you can play
Yeah,
with
'cause
it.
I'm not finding the career clusters.
And the MHS course description manual? I don't know if this is true or not, but.
Darn, I wish that would have worked.
Well,
Yeah, I'm happy to come back and walk you guys through it. It would be fun.
Yes, that would be neat. Yeah.
I think the kids, it's more engaging for the kids than them just cruising through this 96-page thing trying to find a course if they know why this class fits into this particular career cluster. I'm going to take that because if I'm interested in digital photography, what degree will that lead to? What coursework can I take at MCC that'll help me begin my associate's degree, even if I transfer? Those kinds of things, so.
Questions? On your website? No.
It will be.
It will be.
Yeah, so class meetings are Friday, and they'll immediately get that link.
Oh.
So we'll have at a future meeting, MLA Principal Eric Gosling will probably come and talk more about the registered apprenticeship and meat cutting once we are at a point where we can actually bring that agreement forward. And I know that Nicole Critchfield will be speaking with you a little bit more in depth in terms of what the pre-masonry, pre-apprenticeship looks like as well. Some pretty exciting pathways.
Right, that would be our feature, is now where everything is a pathway. How do I get from point A to point B? And if I jump off somewhere between there, I can still finish into a different pathway.
Other questions for Mrs. Wyatt?
I'm just struck at how many classes you offer and how many options you offer a kid. I mean, this is a great example of the excellence that we offer
Absolutely.
students here.
We do. We offer a lot of opportunities for our students. Many of our students, your board member, your student representatives, the students in the Health Career Club, graduation requirement is 22 credits. We have many students who will go over that, significantly over that. We have, last year we did away with senior dismissed the way it used to be. Everybody got a senior dismissed just because. Now we have students who are engaged in MCC classes out at MCC. That's one way. They're doing community service is another way they can earn that dismiss, or they're in some form of a work-based learning experience. They have to provide an evaluation from their employer as part of that proof that I'm in a work-based learning experience. And then, then you can have your senior dismiss. So it's changed a little bit. It's not like it's not doable. Absolutely it's doable, but we want to keep kids engaged in that post-secondary option for them. Any other questions?
May I have a motion to approve the 2021 Marshalltown High School course guide as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, so let me
Is
take
that
the
a Heitman
paperweights.
Hernandez?
You can, absolutely.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 7-0. And based on the number of people who have come and gone from the table, we'll take a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back at 5:27. We're back in order. Dr. Schutte.
Yeah, so just to piggyback off of Jackie's presentation, we're actually, if not before, starting to indoctrinate our middle school students at the 7th grade, particularly through the new exploratory course that they've had this year for the first time with those 16 career clusters and the different jobs that fall within those career clusters that now will be tied to her course guide. And in similar fashion, I've got before you this evening for your approval some Bobcat High School readiness indicators to piggyback with our high school Bobcat Ready platform. These were developed based on what we had already established, based on what recent national research through the National Superintendent's Organization has identified for middle school or junior high readiness standards, and also taking a look at some of the work that has been done in the state of Illinois and the state of Wisconsin, who are looking at adopting similar high school readiness standards statewide. So on the academic end, they're basically, we're saying that students need to, by the end of 8th grade, have identified at that point in time what they think their post-secondary intentions are and/or what career job interests they have. And as I believe you may remember, or those of you that have been on the board, they do a lot of work through the counseling office, through interest inventories and other things to help guide students towards identifying those areas for their 4-year plan that they develop in 8th grade and carry into high school with them. And then in addition to that, which they should all have done, they have to meet at least one of these 2 other academic indicators. No failing grades in the core classes, English, Math, Science, and Social Studies, or demonstrating grade level proficiency on the new Iowa tests in English, language, arts, math, and science. And then for the behavioral or life indicator side of it, we would expect them to meet at least 4 of these 6 indicators. Attendance rate of 90% or better, which is similar. This behavioral one would be new, that we don't have at the high school, no suspensions or expulsions. The third one, no code of conduct violations similar to the high school. Participation in 2 or more organized co-curricular activities. Civic readiness, 10 hours of community service over the 2 years that they're there. And the last one is having self-identified at least one a positive and trusting relationship with adult, which we know through the research is really important at all grades, let alone middle school. So what our intent would be to we would collect this year's data as just baseline data internally, and then launch this next year and launch it for the 8th graders using just their 8th grade year, but for the 7th graders, it would be the cumulative 7th and 8th grade year to do a first end of the year recognition with the 8th grade. But the first full-blown, I suppose, implementation would be with the 7th graders, given they'd have a two-year time frame in order to accomplish this.
Questions for Dr. Schutte?
I think you answered mine, which is going to be, do we have any idea how many of our kids currently would meet these criteria?
If the middle school administration were here, they would have a handle, because I know they took a look at that when I first sent this to them to look at. I don't know what those numbers are, lower than what we would like. But that's why we're establishing these targets for them, so that they have something to shoot for, in addition to just matriculating on to the high school. So we're currently I did vet this with both Jackie and Eric, as at the high school level, as well as with the middle school administration, counselors, instructional coaches, for feedback. We sat down, had a discussion over at Miller about it and how we would go about collecting any of the items that don't naturally get fed into Infinite Campus, similar to what we did at the high school. At the high school, since so much of all their coursework is predicated on semesters, we're only able to monitor and share information after every semester, but at the middle school, they're going to be looking at this quarterly, so there'll be a little bit more frequency over those 2 years that they'll be able to monitor, counsel, advise, promote, et cetera.
Other questions?
What is the plan if they don't meet this criteria?
That's one of the things that we talked about is, and it's no different with the Bobcat Ready, we're not saying if you don't do this, you're absolutely not going to be successful at the next level. But I think this will feed into other metrics that they're using to, for example, determine who may be best served with a summer school experience, for an example, whether it be between 7th and 8th grade or 8th and 9th grade. And Miller's going to be launching a more robust summer school experience starting this summer.
The eighth graders also could have access to the Edmentum coursework and that credit recovery, like 9th, 10th, 11th graders do. So if they did fail their eighth grade core classes, maybe there's a conversation about doing that work in June or July before you go to high school.
That would help them develop that self-discipline, because there's going to be a lot of that.
May I have a motion to approve the readiness indicators to be implemented at Miller Middle School during the 2021 school year as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Baltus Untied, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. Grab your little books, ladies and gentlemen. It's time. I'm sure that you've discovered that this is an easy read book and provides you with some interesting perspectives.
It is very easy.
Each book yeah. Did I look askance at you, or?
No, you just looked up at me, so I didn't know if I was in the right, if you wanted us to come up here now. If you wanted us back there, I would love to go back to my.
No, we're going to put the
post.
microphones back there if that was the case. Because we intend on full participation
I'm ready.
from
Have it
central
three.
office.
And I can participate when I can hear, so great, I'm ready.
Isn't it just fun? Well, this book is divided into multiple sections, and each section has a highlighted topic for the section. Section 1, for what we will be doing this evening, is called Terrible District Teamwork. And it gives us 7 different scenarios. If you are an individual who has been tapped to start the discussion or lead the discussion on a particular scenario, if you would just, first of all, just describe the scenario very briefly, talk about what the correct option should be. The book gives you several options. And then talk about the lessons learned or summarize the statements that would make it so that everyone can understand how not to be a terrible school board member would be part of that scenario. And lucky me, I'm number 1. Yay! Terrible habit number 1 is humiliating a district employee in public. And lucky you all are just sitting right there as district employees.
I've got dirt on Adam too, though, if I need it.
Yeah.
Come on, Adam. This is the district employee firing.
Adam doesn't have the book, but I'm
Adam
sure I
doesn't have book.
have.
Well, in that case.
I think that's one of the habits, actually.
Yeah, coming up. Well, the scenario in this first habit is of a board member who takes a district employee to task at the board table for making a presentation that is grammatically incorrect, has errors in data, has errors in punctuation, spelling, and so on. And we all know that we should not be embarrassing anyone, let alone district employees and fellow board members at the table. That includes all of us. Your point of contact as a board member is the superintendent. Period. That's it. That is the only person that we as board members hire and evaluate. We do not hire and evaluate district employees, teachers, and so on. So when you have a complaint about an administrator, teacher, or classified employee, you need to direct your complaint to the superintendent and not to individuals at the board table. You have, just as an example, you receive these documents and presentations in your board packet each week before the meeting. So part of your preparation is to look through those, and if you have concerns, you contact Dr. Schutte before the board meeting. It's also kind and the way to manage yourself as a board member, if you have questions, to ask those questions beforehand so that the individual can prepare an answer for you. You know how difficult it is, we all do, in our jobs, to be put on the spot and asked a question without some time to research an answer, to prep an answer, to think through the process. So the bottom line is to never humiliate a district employee in public. Those will be the actions that will come around and bite you in your behind when you least expect it. That's not a direct quote from this author, that's my quote. You will be seen as an individual who bullies individuals, should you do something like that at the board table. Other comments about terrible habit number one?
That's great modeling. You want to do habit 2? Yeah, and I think that especially for new board members, if they're not sure on something in terms of whether to contact me, whether it's appropriate or not, relative to the item, our board leadership would also be someone that you could vet your question or concern to, and then they will either direct you to contact me with it, or they may relay the message or whatever too. Fortunately, we haven't had, I don't think, too many issues in this particular situation. It's been more probably about length of presentations and trying to stick to the guidelines, and so we always provide friendly reminders.
Not looking at anyone in particular sitting at the table.
So I had habit 2, which essentially is that individual board members shouldn't be negotiating on behalf of the district, and the scenario was with I think, relatively new board member who had been strongly supported by the teachers union in the candidacy, who receives a phone call on the weekend from the union president saying, having concerns relative to teachers being required to fill in when the recess monitors were absent, even though in the teacher's contract it has a provision where administration has the flexibility to make that assignment for a teacher. Within the context of negotiations, there's was a desire from the teachers to get it out of there. And so during the course of that phone conversation, the board member actually divulged some inside information relative to discussions that had happened between the superintendent and the board, saying, you know, you have this latitude to use in the context of negotiations if you need to give it up, but it's really your call on whether that's something that you want to change or not. And so basically, you know, it's board members' obligations when they get a call of that nature to certainly listen, thank the person, share back with the person in such a way that they know that you were listening and that you heard what they were saying. To simply say that, you know, the board is kept abreast of the progress through the various negotiations that happen, and the desires of whoever's, in this case, teachers' wants and needs relative to that negotiation. But at the end of the day, it's the board as a whole that does the negotiating. Generally, like in our case, we have representatives from the board on each of the different negotiation teams, but ultimately they talk up front about where that latitude, whether it's financial or otherwise, is, get a sense for where the board is willing to go or not go relative to, you know, language and or salary. But basically, you know, just to tell the person that makes a phone call that, you know, that those concerns will be relayed, but all concerns and interests that have been shared will be considered. And then, you know, as far as lessons learned, you know, if this becomes a problem type situation, then either the superintendent and or the board president will have some discussion with the board member to remind them of what their roles and responsibilities are and aren't relative to this topic. Questions on that or comments?
I think that one of the things that board members are always reminded of, as our new board members instructed, when we get together to discuss where negotiations will head and where we will ask administration to take those negotiations, you will be involved in that discussion, and that is not anything that you would share with anybody outside of this room. We will go through all of those particulars when we set up negotiations. Negotiations will probably start in March. So we will have a negotiations conversation at the board table, in closed session, executive session. One of those two.
Exempt session.
One of those kind of sessions. And that is a private conversation. Those conversations are kept private, and they are anything that goes in an exempt or closed session, as even the conversations that we had about suspending and expelling students. That information is private and confidential information, and you cannot divulge that information with anyone outside of this room. To do so will put yourself in jeopardy for legal issues. That information from a closed or exempt session has been shared. You will learn when we have that meeting also about your role as a person on the negotiations team. The board caps where we can go and makes those decisions, and makes decisions on the cutting of programs and or staff. However, Nora and the district's attorney are the negotiators. You will not be speaking during the negotiation session, but when each of the negotiating teams breaks into caucuses, then you can provide input. And then you will provide input to the board as a whole when we have another exempt session for negotiations, conversations. So your role is quite different as a board member. You are representing the district. You are not representing any of the unions. And you will come back and share that information with us. But you'll learn all of that when we have our conversation. I'm assuming early in March. March 2nd?
Well, and this will be a unique year for negotiations, I think, because, for the most part, we're talking salaries, and salary increases. That's not to say that there might not be efforts to want to talk about things that are other than that, but as far as what we're required to negotiate, it's primarily salary and what remains, within the contract. And
That was agreed upon by the negotiation teams last year, that on this year, we would discuss only salaries and not contract or handbook content.
For teachers only.
For teachers only. So, anything else on negotiating? It's a tough one.
I think the way you put it, as I recall it initially when I first came on the board, was that I had a seat at the table for negotiations.
Yeah.
But that was about the extent of it.
Okey dokey. I was bright then. Something's happened. I've gotten older.
May I ask why you're only going to negotiate salaries for teachers? Explain that to me.
That was agreed upon by the negotiating teams, teachers, and administration last year. We spent a lot of time talking about the contract language and moving it into an employee handbook. And we went as far as we could with that last year, and we agreed to only talk about salary this year.
Their contract, their master contract is for 2 years.
Oh, I see.
So it's just salary this year.
Who has 3? Your turn.
That's correct. I have terrible habit 3, and in this one, a board member had it with Hank Bachi, the junior high school principal. Hank, and this board member had collected years of evidence, including when her own child was in this junior high, of this administrator's performance. And so she comprised a letter to the editor detailing all of the blunders of this person. And in a flurry of lack of decision-making, maybe, went ahead and clicked send and emailed it to the local newspaper, and they graciously ran it like in a big spread on a Sunday or something. And then the ripple effect for this board member was she thought she'd been doing the right thing out of pure intentions, but in essence, it didn't work out that way because there were other people in the community that were able to dispute the facts that as she had seen them. She had maybe possibly poisoned or altered the relationship that, as a board member, that she'd have, not just with the superintendent, but with administrators in general in the district. And then most importantly, kind of what Bea was just saying, she violated labor laws in doing so, and exposed herself and the district possibly to lawsuits that might come from that employee. So in the book, they recommend that she had gone to talk to the superintendent about her concerns about this principal, but felt, I think, that nothing had been done about it. And so in the next steps part at the end, they gave a couple recommendations, one being for the superintendent to maybe be more explicit about what he or she would do in that situation as far as having conversations with that administrator, given the information learned. And then the other suggestion they had was to possibly, for the benefit of the whole board, have more personnel updates, which would have to be in closed session, I believe, where they would be reviewing the performance of administrators and others that wouldn't be able to be talked about in a general board meeting, and then that way the whole board would benefit from hearing those conversations. And then lastly, they just recommended as board members that you advocate if you don't feel strong about your background in labor law and understanding what your responsibilities and rights are. So that's something I'm guessing like ASB or the superintendent would have information to help kind of catch people up to speed on.
Yeah, usually those staff developments usually happen in the fall with the HR, employee relations workshops.
They also kind of made a point, and I didn't look at the copyright date on this, but thinking that, oh, I just posted it on my Facebook or my blog, or I emailed it and didn't actually write a letter, that those things would exempt you from being so terrible. But in essence, any type of communication like that is privy to this conversation. So those are not protected communications either when you're speaking as a public board member.
I think that's another example of remembering that this board hires only one person and evaluates only one person.
And I know this is stating the obvious, but no matter, no matter the capacity in which we are within the community, we are representative of the district and the school board, you folks. So even though it's on your personal Twitter or your personal Facebook, I know we're always representing the school district, and so that's important to remember. And then just, as a side, it's always easy, to judge the performance of others or from the outside, not understanding the complexities of, management, as many of you are aware. So from the outside, it may look like somebody is making interesting decisions or you're not understanding where they're coming from. But to truly understand everything, you need to be on the inside and see all sides of the story. So being wary of judging others, especially their performance at all times.
Other comments? Mr. Mike?
Yep. So, terrible habit number 4 is called micromanaging of the superintendent. The scenario here is a well-meaning board member that has some expertise and has a neighbor that has expertise in computer science and decides to go visit the computer lab in the school, sort of bypassing the principal of the school and the superintendent, and takes real diligent notes about what's going on in the lab and makes a bunch of recommendations about how they should teach, what kind of software they should have, how often they should update computers and whatnot, and starts advocating for that. And so the terrible habit here is not visiting a school. Visiting schools are good in moderation, not with an eye for micromanaging, but for an eye of kind of just what's going on, knowledge and seeing kids learning and those kinds of things. I think we do that a lot here. But this board member took it too far by starting to manage the district, manage the classroom and the school directly as opposed to managing the superintendent directly. And so the lesson here is to back off of the direct recommendations to teachers, and your job, B, you just took my thunder. You said you manage the performance of the superintendent and really not anybody else. The other line in here I thought that was interesting, however, was a sentence that says, of course, the board has a major responsibility to make funding decisions related to the support of, in this case, it was computer labs, but, could be anything. And so while we do only manage one person, we do have the power of the pen. And I guess that's the ultimate responsibility of a school board member. So.
And I think that's one of the reasons that we wanted to put particular focus on those curricular visits to things of significance that the board has, approved the funding for, whether it was curriculum or professional development, or, we really want the board to see those things in action. So I know, like Ashley mentioned, at Anson, the positive action curriculum, and on 2 of our visits, I think to Rogers and to Franklin, we saw evidence of that. And then, of course, a PLC and MTSS process and the interventions that are taking place with the differentiation of how students are being supported, whether they're in need of more remediation, whether they should be at that point in time, or whether they're needing enrichment based on the monitoring of their performance, so.
The reason why I brought that sentence out, particularly for new board members, I've been through this book a couple of times, and I've been through several of the IASB trainings at one time or another when I was a new school board member. And this book and lots of those IASB trainings are all about what you can't do as a school board member. And when I get done reading this book, I think, my goodness, I can't do anything. And so I give you that sentence as there's something that you can do. You're in charge of the budget, and you can make decisions about strategy and direction based on where you or we as a group collectively think money ought to be spent. And so I've read this book twice now, and I come away from it feeling depressed. And so I wanted to bring something out that makes me feel a little bit better about the role that I actually have here.
Well, to make you happier, if you look at the first full paragraph on page 22, it says your job as an overseer includes setting the course for the district, setting and revising policy, making major decisions about instructional programs, making prudent financial decisions, making prudent personnel decisions, hiring and evaluating, only the superintendent, and discussing the voting on plans for managing the district. There's lots of work to do, lots of things you can do and should do.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Including all those board policies that.
Oh, yes, we have just a few hundred of them today.
Well, I'm going to use that as a transition to talk about terrible habit number 5, because I know you want to get to those policies. This one is never question the administration. And so the scenario is that as board members, you're getting information all the time about how we're proposing spending money and what we want to spend it on. And this board member
Nice directions, Joe.
Are we good now? Yeah. Okay. And so this board member was doing her homework and was preparing for the board meeting. Something was coming across that, the person had several questions about because it was a pretty large purchase. And they arrive at the meeting and don't ask any of those questions. And so as you play through the scenario, what it talks about is the idea of absolutely, board members, you need to be curious and you need to try to understand, how you're making decisions and what you're making decisions on. But the best way, kind of going back to what, B said in the very first scenario, reach out early, bring those questions ahead of time, try to contact people ahead of time, meet with them and try to learn, what you can ahead of time. You can do it at this board meeting as well, but if you reach out early, you can get usually more information because we have more time to prepare and go through information with you. And the lesson learned is that, board members, they need to seek to be well-informed and deliberative on all their decisions. And I think that's some of the practices that Dr. Schutte has brought, where, as we're thinking about large purchase items or changes that, we haven't talked to you guys about in the past, giving you information as early as possible, trying to explain what's going on, where it's coming from, why we're landing on this decision compared to another, so.
Other comments?
Matt, I think the things that you say there are right. I'll give you an example today. This showed up on my desk when I showed up at 5. It's real hard to ask a question before the meeting when this showed up on my desk at 5. And so had I had a question about it, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to ask it ahead of time. I would have had to ask it at this table, even if it's a hard question. And so I think the asking of questions at this table, in my own personal opinion, is a fine thing to do, so long, and even asking hard questions is a fine thing to do, so long as you do it in a respectful manner. And so we ought to be able to have conversations about hard subjects. Sometimes people think it's hard because Jocelyn's got a camera back there and we're being recorded. But to me, it's our job to ask those kinds of hard questions. And so I don't want this to, it's not going to give me any incentive to stop asking hard questions. What it may do is say, am I asking this question in a respectful way? And so to me, that's the important distinction here.
Okay.
That is true, but this audit report was in your board docs packet.
I didn't receive Gabby's board docs email this week. So, Jan, you said you didn't either? Yeah. So that, normally that's a rarity. I get that that's a rarity. But.
And these are always made available, posted to the board on board docs as of Thursday evening for board review Thursday through.
Anybody else not get it? So we need to check into why two of you did not receive the packet.
I didn't get Theron's normal weekend email either. I don't know if you didn't send your normal
News and notes.
News and notes.
your normal Saturday news and notes. I didn't get that either.
The one that has like the agenda for this meeting on it, I usually get that, and I didn't.
Oh.
If you don't get it on Thursday, then you should contact Gabby on Friday.
Okay.
Well, I thought because the meeting was Tuesday, maybe it was a little weird or something, not Monday, but maybe Gabby was sending me a message or something.
But, I mean, knowing that 98, 99% of the time she's posting to board docs Thursday at the end of the workday for her by 4:30, you should be able to just go into board docs and the authenticated part, the part where you use your password and pull it up, whether you get that email or not. But we'll definitely double check that because Mike, when I send out the news and notes, I use the board group email and the full administrative team email, so we'll double check that just to make sure names haven't disappeared in there for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I got something from you. I didn't get anything from Gabby. I think I got one from you that had 4 attachments. But I really cannot fault you or Gabby because I was checking at 6 o'clock this morning. I didn't check
You
the
did get the news and notes?
I do believe I got
Okay.
yours. But
Yeah, we'll
anyway,
double check it.
I did not check soon enough to have alerted Gabby before this meeting.
So can I just add to, Mike, that I appreciate the comment you made about respectful, because I think that's a hallmark of being like on our side, being administrators, is that I want to know what questions you have, because if I'm up here once a month or every other month presenting things and I'm not giving you all the information you need, then that's a waste of everyone's time. Like if you had just maybe said to me, in the future, could you include like what that looks like per pupil or, just something like that, then I would make a mental note, okay, so in the future, I'm going to need to put that in there for the board members because they've asked to see it. So I guess in that way, I appreciate the questions as long as they're sent respectfully, because it gives me an opportunity to improve the product as you go along versus, continually making the same, it's not really errors, but just omissions in kind of the full picture, because we do this every day. We take for granted you don't do this every day, so you don't know all the things that we know. Well,
I think at the bottom, yeah.
you should, no, you should.
I think at the bottom of page 27, that states that very succinctly. The board that seeks to be well-informed and deliberate in all its
Yeah.
decisions. When board members ask questions, they should do with respect to the expertise and commitment of the administration. I don't think that in any way we're saying don't ask the questions.
No, I think, B, I think in particular, you do a really good job of giving me a lot of rope sometimes. So I appreciate that. And so I assume if I was being a total jerk, you'd yank that rope back real hard.
Yeah.
But, so I keep waiting for it.
It's a zinger under the table, you'll feel it.
The only other thing I'd say is, whether you're a new board member here or, an experienced. Go off again.
It does to save its battery.
There you go.
Great.
So
Okay, I'm good. Whether you're an experienced board member or new, the folks up here, we wear a lot of different hats. So if you ever want to learn about what, all the different things that we do or the different programs or services we oversee, please ask.
I'm just stricken by Lisa's comment, we don't know all that you don't know. Boy, is that an ocean.
It's very profound, isn't it? I don't even know what I said.
But you respectfully asked that.
I hope that was respectful, yes. I don't want to get on Gabby's bad side like Mike.
And I will have to correct what I said earlier, because I just found Gabby's email. So she did send it, and I did get it, and I'm sorry. It's down, it's there. Anyway. I have habit 6. And I felt like it was probably assigned on purpose, because when I ran for school board, I knocked 400 doors, as everyone has heard, and basically asked people, what do you think of the school system? And I heard a lot of positive things. Darren hasn't heard all the positive things I've heard, but I did hear some really good stories, including one about Dan Taronis and what a caring and effective person he's been. And this one, the board member wants to meet with teachers, and I'll have to admit, I felt cautious about that, because having taught here for 17 years, I do have relationships with the teachers and some of the administrators and many of the families. We've lived in this community since 1983. And so this person's wanting to make these connections and feeling a need to know what's going on in the building. And so she says, oh, I'll have lunch with the teachers. So it devolves into administration bashing, which, if you've ever been a teacher, you know is a great deal of fun. But as a board member, it's probably not a good idea. Okay? Even as a teacher, it's really not a good idea. Okay? So their suggestion really is to keep these conversations purposeful and positive. Because I'm really, and that is basically when people start to go down that road, what I have been saying. I am not here to evaluate your administrators. I'm not here to evaluate your teachers. I'm here to listen to you, listen for trends, and basically when I hear many complaints on the same topic, I'm going to bring it to Theron or to one of the administrators and say, I'm hearing this, I don't want to name any names, and then I drop it. Because it really, as a board member, I don't feel like I don't want to be in the day-to-day operation. That's not what I'm about. I'm about that conduit between the community and what can I do to help? That's really what I'm here to do. And I don't want to be in the middle of it. So they suggested just keeping lunch focused on positive exchanges of information. And one of you had suggested at one time just making sure administrators know before I come to a building. When I visited Ronnie Manis's building, he showed me what they were doing with number sense, so I had heard that before he came here. And it's really pretty impressive. And those are the types of things that I like to know. I want to know what's happening and things that are going well, and that things that, if they're not going well, what can we do as a board to support the administrators and the teachers? And so, but this person did suggest that you not let it just devolve into a complaining session, which is important.
I think there's a good summary statement on 31, right below the appropriate course of action statements. It says, if you feel you would like to talk informally with teachers, that is within your purview as a board member. It's not saying you can't. It's just saying do it tactfully and delicately, remembering that you should never become a mediator between teachers and administrators. So it's not saying you can't, it's just saying be careful how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think 7's for next time, isn't it?
And I just, on that topic, I think one of the really good things that Dr. Stevenson, you put together is these curricular visits where we get to go to schools and find out what's going on, see stuff in action. So I think that's been
It is.
really beneficial.
I agree, if I can, or it doesn't usually fit in my schedule, but I do like the fact that you're doing it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for next time, we have Sean is number 7, Paulette's number 8, Bob is 9, Sarah's 10, Karina's 11, and Nora's 12. Okay. Thank you all for your work. Moving on to our favorite part of the meeting, board policies. Having learned tonight that that's one of your responsibilities.
So all of these policies came before you at the last meeting for review. Mike reviewed 4 of them with you, and then I reviewed the small change that we made to the licensed employee retirement. We have not made any changes since then to these.
Could I have a motion to amend 407.3, 504.5?
So moved.
Second.
Miller Heitman, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Then we need to delete,
I'm sorry, that was 4073 and 5045?
yes. Miller Heitman.
Thank you.
Then we need to delete 905.1.
So moved.
Second.
Heitman, Untate. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Old 9051 has been deleted. Now we need to adopt new 905.1. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Unteed,
Altus.
Heitman, Baltus, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. And what about 905.1 R3?
Yeah, I think we need to,
Did we make some additional changes?
yeah, I think we need to treat that as a first reading that will come back as a second reading, because we added a paragraph to that policy that spoke towards the fact that our employees who are invoked to work should not receive gratuities in addition to the payment that we make to them. So that'll come back.
905.1 R3 will come back as a first reading,
Yes.
as a change has been made. Okey dokey. Dr. Schutte, we've got some new policies.
You want to start with the 2 that you had, Karina?
Good. We need to delete them.
Oh, okay.
You're suggesting that 905.2 and 905.4 be deleted?
Yeah.
Motion was made by Hernandez, seconded by Miller. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. 905.2 and 905.4 are deleted. Okay.
Okay, 303.5 is a new policy that IASB is recommending. It simply is outlining general administrator duties. And then there's another policy, 303.8, that talks about administrators' civic activities, so promoting their engagement in the community as well as the school. That's a new policy from IASB as well. And then there's a new policy that's somewhat timely, 401.9, called employee political activity. And timely because of the caucuses and such. And so those will all come back to you.
What about 4059?
Yeah, 4059, licensed employee probationary status, also will come back. There were some adjustments made a couple of years ago in the length of the probationary status for teachers. And then 407.3E1, I asked Nora to go ahead and develop an exhibit, which is basically a template for a resignation or retirement letter, because it's highly recommended that there be a witness other than an administrator to those letters. So we thought it'd be helpful for people to give them a.
Are there any questions about those new policies?
Wait 1 second, I want to look at one thing. Would there be any issue in employees engaging in political activity if, for instance, there was a caucus at Franklin Elementary?
Are you in 4019?
I am in 4019, yes. I asked that because I ran the caucus at Franklin Elementary last night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is speaking primarily towards during their contract day, not after hours, and if, school facilities are a site for political activity, but it's speaking towards while under contract, during their contract time.
So should it be more,
And with district email.
To promote a particular candidate at my caucus, that would be inappropriate on the school email.
Right.
Teaching students how people caucus is not inappropriate.
Right.
And that's not political activity, that's education, right? Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Those will all come back.
That does not state, though, during the particular employee's school day. I don't mean to be a bulldog about this, and maybe I don't have to worry about it, and yet.
should it be added to make it more clear?
Emails are public and they belong on the school domain. An employee shouldn't be putting out political advertisement of that sort on the school email. They should be using their personal.
I'm not referring, I don't think we're referring to that. It does say you can't engage in political activity upon property under the jurisdiction of the
Right.
board.
We're
It includes
talking
email
about an
accounts, but it
appendix.
doesn't, it's not limited to email accounts.
Yeah, we can, we'll take a look at that and consult and see if we need to add something there to clarify that a little
I
better.
sincerely doubt anyone's going to get fired of being at any caucus of any party, the pirate, the independent, the whatever, but just to be clear.
Yep.
It just needs to say
Well, this is
during the contract day.
Right.
Right, because if you had students involved in a particular political party off the school site, outside school day, that's their right to do that.
We're talking about
Employees will not engage
in-school property, though,
political
too.
activity during their contract day, upon the property, email, et cetera. Got it?
And any duties they have for the district, like if they're with a bowling team coaching somewhere or something like that?
What would be
Like
political?
while they're doing work that they're contracted for.
Oh, can you bowl for a political campaign or something? What?
They shouldn't ever be using district email.
Well, let's say you're
Right.
taking a bus all the way to Mason City for a ball game. You shouldn't be having your students stuff flyers for a political campaign on the bus, because that's crossing that boundary.
Yeah, and so the school day thing, or whatever, during the official duties, that covers that.
While under contract.
What
Yeah,
you
just
said,
while under
basically.
contract.
Thank you.
Good point.
Anything else?
We were thinking the same.
Okay, 9051R1.
Yeah, so 905-1R1, well, actually, all of these remaining policies all have to do with facility rentals. And so Paulette and I have been working through all of these to make sure that, well, comparing them to ISB, number one, because some of them we have in place, some of them may be new. And then also, we've had a lot of discussions, including with the administrative team, since principals are oftentimes the gatekeepers on the front end of the rental of their facilities, about what past practice has been, what current practice is, and what practice should be going forward. So I think there'll be ongoing discussions, but in addition to you looking at these as a review, they will be reviewing them and giving us some feedback too in the event that we need to
So
make some
we need to
additional
bring those
changes.
back at the next meeting, and will we have their review by then?
Yeah, we will have
Okay.
received feedback, and if warranted, we'll make adjustments and have to
So
review
we're bringing
some of
all the
them.
905s back.
Yep.
905-1, R1, R2,
I have a question.
E2, E3, E1.
Just on, school community relations. Not expecting necessarily that you even know, but would the senior high community auditorium have any, if this was adopted, would it have any impact on Live on Stage Marshalltown?
No.
Okay.
Got that? Are you good? Everybody else good? Okay. Any items of note in communications, Mr. Sodders? Okay. Our next meeting, February 17th, Rogers Elementary will be giving their school showcase. Insurance Benefits Advisory Committee is coming up. Board curricular visits coming up in February, March, and April. Jan has 9055 and 9056 policies for next meeting.
Gabby will
Gabby
send
will
those to you.
send them to you and send you the IASB items that are similar or the same as. You're
Yeah.
looking at the two, and then you get in touch with Darren to what you think needs to be changed, stay the same. Yeah, yeah, Gabby will.
And I will have looked at them by this weekend, and so I'll send you, if I pick up on any things that we need to look at changing to. I'll send
And
you.
Gabby will get those out to you right away. I mean, they'll come quickly. Yeah. We have some committees that met since last. MBEA, Theron?
Yeah, so we had a great MBA meeting, I felt. We had Joe Murphy, who's the new Iowa Business Council Executive Director, come and present, particularly on that council's development of a K-12 careers pathway, which very much dovetails the work that we're doing throughout the district to prepare kids for post-secondary. And then we had David, I can't remember his last name. It's Ottavianelli, from John Deere World headquarters, came and shared with the group the work that they're doing out in eastern Iowa in terms of developing registered apprenticeships and actually across the state through Deere, but particularly he's in the Quad Cities. Talking about registered apprenticeships that they've set up, particularly with Davenport and North Scott schools out in eastern Iowa, but these are cropping up in all different areas. So it was great for our particular advanced manufacturing members of MBA to hear this, because one of the hangups has been needing to be age 18, which is not the case. There are just a couple things that kids can't do between the ages of 16 and 18. But they can be under registered apprenticeships and doing many types of work, whether it be welding, machinery, other things. There's just certain facets. So he talked about that. He provided some great handouts as well, and so members that weren't able to attend had all the presentations as well as the handouts sent out to them. We'll likely at the next meeting have Jim Whiteman from the Iowa Department of Labor. We've been working hand in hand with in order to apply for registered apprenticeships, and they've really tried to streamline that work and make it as easy as possible, because it used to be pretty cumbersome, which was kind of prohibitive on the businesses end particularly to want to delve into that as well.
I think it was also important for the business leaders in the community who have been giving some pushback on school-based learning to hear the work-based learning focus that we're trying to become more involved in. It's nice to hear it from somebody, it's kind of like, it's nice to hear it from somebody other than mom and dad. Dad.
And the other thing is that, as you guys know, for many of our seniors particularly, they have time during the school day that they can do this stuff. So it's not something that just has to be an event in the summer or a weekend thing, but they honestly could devote time if they determined that they had the interest and passion for it to actually work in the afternoon and learn on the job, so.
Board members attend allow meeting?
Couldn't.
Lisa?
Oh, you want me to report on what
Yeah,
happened?
would you please?
I'm sorry, yeah, we had about 12 people that came and we reviewed our enrollment of our English learners, the cost of the district, our exit rates, and then all of those we did in relation to the state average. So where are we making gains and where do we need more support?
And to piggyback off that, we had some people participating in a conference on equity, right, too?
At UNI. Right. Yeah, they had it's a pre-service conference for 2 days at UNI, and they surveyed the teachers, and the overwhelming need they felt was they weren't prepared to work with English learners when they leave UNI. So they brought in McFarland Clinics, PT was there, Embark, different people from Waterloo, and then Sue Cahill, Sue and Elder, Raul, they had a panel where they talked about related arts and community supports that we wrap around our English learners so that they get integrated and access to our public libraries and different trades in the community colleges. And then Rachel Inks and I did a panel presentation on how we use our diversity in all the decisions that we make in curriculum and programs. And there were about 50 or so students there every time, so it was a good audience, future teachers for Marshalltown. Well,
So this meeting that I missed, is that a regular meeting?
it meets like about 3 times a year. We'll have one more before the end of the year.
Internal communications?
Was that recently? That's a Nora report out, actually.
Oh, okay.
She may not be prepared to do that, though.
I'm ready.
All right.
Hey.
Maybe I did remember to help you with that, I don't know.
Yeah, sure, they evaluate you, yes. Just kidding. All righty, so we met last Friday, the internal communications group, and some things that were discussed. Lisa was asked to speak to the Bobcat Life Ready indicators, so she gave a quick update, basically saying, that SIAC was finalizing and figuring out how we were going to measure them. We had what I hope to be the final discussion on the acceptance, the technology agreement form that all district staff members are asked to sign, just saying they're going to be appropriate, and responsible with technology and their internet usage and things like that. So it was just one kind of final wrap up for that. There was a quick discussion about the calendar and how there is quite a break without a
Next year's calendar.
or I'm sorry, next year's calendar, the
A
2021.
long stretch, January, February without a break.
There's
since
a,
we
yeah,
don't
there are
have
days
spring
without
break.
students, but not a full day without work for the teachers. And so they had discussed, moving a comp day around, and the things that they were kind of recommending were already discussed in its entirety with the calendar committee, because there's a calendar committee that discusses this ahead of time and they bounce ideas off. So it's kind of decided that, that idea, or that the fact that there was a long stretch was already discussed. And so there was, if they would like to suggest edits moving forward, to really have, bring those to that calendar committee, because that's what that purpose is. I gave a quick, let's see, student behaviors. They provided a teacher survey that they had sent to the MEA members with some behaviors and continuum services, concerns that they have, de-escalation strategies that they were talking about needing more of or wanting more of. We asked them to kind of also provide some strategies besides listing the problems, because it's really helpful to hear from the teachers or the certified staff what they perceive or what are the issues. That's really important, but we also like to hear some strategies for moving forward to ameliorate the issues. Talked about how there's an insurance meeting coming up this week. Handbook update. The handbooks are in the hands of Bea and Sean for revision, and then they will come to you folks for approval. Brad and I are going to work on the seniority list. We had a lot of substitute teachers hired this last couple months. These last few months, we had about 10, and I've got 3 more coming up, so that's 13 new subs, which is great because we really need them. And then Paulette and I spoke to the Iowa Chapter 279 about the probationary teachers, and how the aim is to provide probationary contracts moving forward, because we never have really done that. We've been, we follow Chapter 279, and there are different provisions for issuing or giving contracts to probationary teachers from year to year. If you're a probationary teacher, you don't have the same rights of appeal or things like that. There are fewer rights, I guess, for appeal if you're a probationary teacher. What I'm trying to say, not eloquently, is that we obviously follow state code, but our contracts are going to align more closely to that, so it's clear, the communication is clear to those probationary teachers. So it was productive, it was great, and we look forward to the next one. Anything else?
Thank you.
And that committee is MEA leadership and representation from across the district, usually one person at least per building.
Anything from finance that we didn't talk about tonight already?
Nope.
We had pizza.
Oh, well, you're not supposed to tell those things.
It was a thrilling meeting. It was well done. It was.
What have we done tonight in this very long meeting to improve the education for the students in Marshalltown?
The Anson presentation was really good on the improved performance in math. Good job to them.
Yeah,
Hey.
that's right.
Like to hear everything that's really offered at the high school. That's just amazing. I agree with Miller. It's quite a bit, and it gives the kids a very good opportunity to do stuff. And the fact that she's adding and partnering with other colleges. I mean, I'm just seeing now Kirkwood.
Approve that trip to Mayo.
Pardon me?
Approve the trip to Mayo
Oh, yeah.
for the health club. Heard they've got 120 kids, is that what they said in the health club? So that was impressive to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I am growing in my appreciation, which is only indirectly helping students, for the patience and expertise of Paulette, because I have only asked her 33,000 questions in the last month, and she's answered them all very gracefully.
Was that 3 or 33?
33,000. You called him dad, so that's worse.
I am thankful that we did the proclamation for the school counselors, because honestly, I've worked in a lot of school districts, and those 16 or so people here are just, they're stellar, they really are, and they're kind of the backbone of all of our schools, I think. So,
We're very fortunate to have a counselor in every building as well. That doesn't happen in many districts.
And I'm thankful for the Auditorium Foundation to find the value in that wall of honor that we created and to be willing to help support financially. That getting put up, Bea was part of that meeting when I presented to them the idea of them supporting what we were working on, and there was a lot of advice and suggestions as to what it could or should be, but I think for the most part, people are really happy with, and so now we have something in the auditorium that is similar in nature to what we have in the Roundhouse, recognizing excellence in student performance.
And I appreciate what you talked about with the school to work programs or working for these apprenticeships.
Yeah.
In my mini door knockings, that was another thing that came up regularly, was the need to get some of these young people into the workforce early and to develop those habits and learn how to work for a boss, how to negotiate what they need to do, how to look to see what work needs to be done. So I appreciate my doing that.
I'm thankful for a clean bill of health
That was
in our
very
finance department. Yay.
Good work, Paulette and team.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we would anticipate being probably back on a normal cycle of audits here this next year, right? So,
His comments about the food service department really stuck with me.
Yeah.
That audit, that's pretty impressive.
Good job, Lynn.
Well, my quote tonight comes from that famous gentleman called Mr. Anonymous. It goes like this: excellence is never an accident. It is a result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, skillful execution, and the vision to see obstacles as opportunities. I think we saw that a lot tonight. Excellence. I have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Heitman, Untied. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.